Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we're going to be looking at the weekly meta breakdown for the traditional standard best of 3 format. I'm going to do kind of an overview. There's been a lot of MTGO tournaments the past week, last chance qualifiers, standard challenges, stuff of that nature. So a lot of the focus is going to be on results from those or a couple larger tournaments that did happen. We will rely on some data from UntappedGG, including just like a snapshot of where the metagame is from the Arena ladder. So if you want to get started with Untap, link is in the video description. We're also going to be looking at MTG decks as well as MTGO league data. One thing to kind of preface before we come in, there was a Wizards hosted their weekly kind of touch point on Twitch. They were talking about ban and restricted philosophy. They covered a number of different formats. They didn't mention anything specific for standard, but they are mentioning that there's expected changes in both Pioneer and Modern. In Modern, it was pretty much alluded to that at least Fury is probably going to go, potentially some more out of the scam decks, or the Beanstalk decks could also see a hit potentially. In Pioneer, they did kind of briefly touch base on Karn as well as the Discover combo, and specifically mention the level of unfun that it is to lose on turn 3 with your opponent casting one spell. They also mentioned about potential unbans in Pioneer, so get your speculations going, what you think that might be. As such, I'm not going to do a metagame breakdown for this week on Explore, just because I don't want people to craft something and then something gets banned next week. I would just be kind of cautious with that. So going in, if you were thinking about building the Discover deck and you were going to craft a bunch of cards, probably hold off till December 4th, which is Monday's announcement, before doing so. But standard seems to be where it is for the time being, so we're going to take a look and go into it. So the meta for today, popularity, in a surprise to no one, Esper is continuing its chain of like 19 years of being the best deck in the format. Turns out when you extend rotation and don't ban anything, the obscenely powerful cards that dominated a format continue to be obscenely powerful and dominate a format. They got some new tools in it, but continually we're seeing Esper as one of the top decks in the format. We're also seeing 4-color domain, the Rakdos Ramp decks up to 20%. It's funny because we thought, Cavern of Souls is going to be great for the dinosaur decks or like random creature type X. Well, it turns out Atraxa is an angel, and so is Archangel of Wrath. So they're playing the Caverns of Souls in the deck there. Golgari Midrange is still being seen about 10% of the time. I'm not seeing many positive stats for it in recent bits. Similar with Dinosaurs, seeing 7.5%, but it's got a pretty low win rate. It's a deck that's kind of susceptible to Sunfalls, which see a lot more play in the best of 3 format. I think it's more of a best of 1 deck. Soldiers, Gruul kind of coming down, and then Boros Convoke and Mono Red Aggro about 5%. We actually see, if we just look at like the introduction of the new set, Lost Caverns of Ixalan, Esper was at 17%, it's peaked at 33%, and it's kind of settling around 30%. See Domain kind of drop and slowly start recovering now. Similarly, the Golgari deck modeling a similar curvature to that of 4-color Domain, just at a lower percentage. Otherwise, we got a kind of a grouping of the 5% decks there. So we're going to look, there's not much data, to be honest, best of 3 right now. Diamond to Mythic rank, just a shade under 10,000 matches, so best of 3 games for the last week, 21st to 28th of November. If we compare it to like best of 1, that same period of time, we're looking at 110,000, so 11 times the amount of games being played between the 2 formats. We're going to jump in. The top deck on the Arena ladder from Untap tracking is Boros Convoke. And no, this isn't a Pioneer deck. It is a standard deck. Just turns out when a lot of the same cards are legal in both formats, you play them. So obviously no Venerated Loxodon. Not quite the super explosive. The Pioneer version's nuts. I was playing it. There's a video I just put up yesterday. It's pretty reasonable to get turn 2 8 to 14 power on board in that deck, which is just wild. Like, your opponent's just like, yeah, cool, here's a 1/1. But It's basically mono white, splash red for Imodane's Recruiter in the main. Cavern of Souls helps fix some of that. But you're just trying to go wide. You have your human strategy, Warden of the Inner Skies, recruitment officers, hopeful initiate. So your human tribal, resolute reinforcement helps you go wide as well. Knight Errant of Eos gives you some advantage, card advantage, and then Imodanes give your team haste and a whole bunch of extra power. Destroy Evils in the sideboard for like bigger things or enchantments. Good against like the ramp decks. Invasion of Gobokan for the more slow control decks. Lantern Farer's removal. Extraction Specialist for like the grindier matchups that are non-exile based. Knockout Blow for mono red, and then for the grindier matchups you also have Wedding Announcements in the side. I want to show another Boros deck that's been popular as well. This is a Boros Humans deck. Similar idea, but less around the Convoke elements. I actually kind of like this deck more. So it's got Akin Pakal as well as Adeline, kind of both in that 3-drop slot, both care about making a bunch of tokens to go wide. Similar ideas with like Recruitment Officer, Brutal Cathar, Copperco Vanguard, Hopeful Initiate, Adelines. It's also seeing some Kellens, Daring Traveler to provide some card advantage off the top of your opponent's or off your library. So it gets you some value there. Thalia's Lunarch Veterans gains you a bunch of life in this deck that helps you in the mirrors. Inti, which is a really sweet card from the new set, lets you kind of loot the extra legendaries, put counters, and provide some card advantage. And then similar with the Warden for some value. Some Get Lost in the main board. And then we see like the Cavern of Souls mixed into there as well. Sideboard, very similar. The tax effects with Peacekeepers, the removal option, Specialist, stuff like that in this version here. We then go to aforementioned Esper Midrange, 59% win rate. So this was the mid-range version, not the Legends. We've seen a lot of the decks just shift to this mid-range. Big cards they've added is Subterranean Schooner, 2 mana, 3/4, that when the creature crews it and the schooner attacks, they explore, so some card advantage there. Suite of like removal, counters, cut downs, get lost, go for the throats, make disappears. We're also seeing full for Deep Cavern Bat. This just really kind of disrupts your opponent's curve. It's a great target afterwards to gain you life, and it can kind of take out your opponent's removal for one of your key pieces or kind of screw up their curve elements. Virtue of Loyalty, Wedding Announcements, Fiends in there, Wandering Emperor, the same things we've seen for months to years now. We got Restless Anchorage in the sideboard. Or in the mana base sideboards, just like removal, hand hate, counters, extra Shieldreds when they're relevant. Actually, no Shieldred means kind of cool. Wandering Emperor in the side, so just really kind of tailoring how you want to be. If you want to be more, you're going against ramp, you bring in the counters. You're going against more aggressive decks, bring in the removal, kind of shift your focus in that respect. I was doing my breakdown. So then we have the ramp deck. So the thing is, there's a ramp deck on untap, but it looked a little unrefined. This was the one that Yellow Hat Gabriel Nassif was playing in one of the standard challenges over the weekend. And it is so the focus of the deck is largely shifted to green-white only now. You'll notice in the main board, like outside of Atraxa, you have the Archangels, Topiary Stompers. It's all just like splash effects. So like the Atraxa, Archangel gets you the splash for the kicker. To populate Sunfall both mains, so going more controlling, full Beanstalks main, full Invasions, you have Nissa in the main board. Full 4 Cavern of Souls, and you see just like the splash colors, so fewer off-color lands in here. In the sideboard, you have Chromos Seed Shark. For like the post-board heavy kind of counterspell matchups, you kind of shift your focus down. People bring in Disdainful Strokes, it's a good way to kind of approach it. Against aggressive decks, you have another Depopulate. Jace for the mirror, for kind of the control matchups. Mono red, aggressive decks, you have Knockout Blow. Negates when needed. Obstinate Baloth for like heavy discard decks, or for aggressive decks, and then Lockdown for the more aggressive decks. So you can kind of shift your focus as needed. Then go to Azorius Midrange. So elements of the kind of Esper Midrange. This one is a Tempo Flash version. So this deck here went 8-1, top 8'd a 370-person tournament over the weekend. So you have Spyglass Siren, which is seeing play. So a lot of the formats like dorky flyers, 1-drop flyers that kind of fuel the schooner, and then like tempo elements in terms of flash counter spells. So you have Spyglass Siren, Denix in here to shut off like Graveyards, Lifelink, Wardens, the Shanna's Tidebinder, card seeing play in Modern now. flash kind of stifle for as long as it's in the battlefield. Pretty reasonable threat there. You have your schooners, make the spears, destroy evils, virtue of loyalty, announcements. What Wandering Emperor? I think this might be the first deck ever to play Wandering Emperor and Wedding Announcement in the same deck, says no one. Full Anchorage, full Myrex, so you can kind of tempo them out. Your sideboard, you have like removal options, more counter spells, Invasion of Gobakan, so even Sunfall, so you can shift up if you want to become more of a control deck. Koski is welcome, provides some card advantage with all the small creatures as well. Sorry, I was looking again. You know what? We showed mono red. Let's look at mono red. So mono red again. This one went 7-2, top 32 in a 370-person tournament. We see the deck. We still have the Swiss Spears, Bloodthirsty, Skumanos, 3 Squeeze, 3 Godric, single copy of Feldon. Feldon's better in best of 1 to be more copies because the format tends to be less exile based and more damage based through creature combat, especially a higher density of mono red. So it's better in that case there. 4 Charming Scoundrels, 1 Shivan Devastator on the top end. And I like this version. This one's very close to the paper version I put together for standard season. The Lightning Strikes, Play with Fires, 3 Witch Stalkers, and 2 Nahiri's Warcrafting. Just really an ode to the fact that the format is a little bit larger. And while you want to be aggressive, you do need to be able to answer 4 and 5 toughness. There's not so much 4 toughness outside of the ramp deck, but there's a lot of like 5 toughness. I guess with Adalin it might be, but just having like a little bit larger damage. 3 Mishras, 2 Sokuzens in there. To end the festivities for the Go Wide decks, Wedding Announcement decks. Jaya for the Grindier matchups. Urabrask Forge, really good against the Grindier matchups as well. Furnace Punisher for the greedy mana bases, the Esper deck, stuff like that. I don't love Furnace Punisher. I've always been of that mindset where like the Domain deck plays a bunch of basics. I guess like the Esper deck, how many basics are they playing? 1 basic. Okay, so I guess first Esper, since it's so popular, it makes sense in that regard to kind of go from that avenue of attacking the format that way there. So you could kind of go from there, and then just like barrages and abrades. The other deck that's been picking up some popularity, this was from a MTGO Last Chance qualifier, the Rakdos Breach decks. So kind of the core of the deck is it's like a ramp deck, go for the throat, Celestis, Ironcrag, big score type effects. You go into Tali, Chandra, Torch of Defiant, or Hope's Beacon, Breach the Multiverse, Burn Down the House. So just kind of a bigger mana deck. You have it's Rakdos control ramp style. Full 4 Burn Down, 3 Brotherhood's End. So a lot of interaction there. You can double up the Burn Down the Houses with Chandra. This one's on full 4 Archfiend of Dross to kind of close out the game quickly. Hand Hate, Graveyard Hate, Sweepers, just more early removal, 2 Sheoldreds, and 4 Lithomantic Barrage. Actually kind of curious, like I would think that you maybe want more copies of the Duress for like the ramp deck, but interesting to see that kind of configuration. And then lastly, we have the found this list. I don't know how this ever beats a Sunfall, but it went 5-0 on an MTGO league. Black-White Angels, Resplendent Angel, Lunarch Veteran, Voice of the Blessed, Giada, Inspiring Overseer. So just like Angel synergies, Virtue Persistence, some removal, bunch of like uncounterable, and then your sideboard just really trying to find those, discard those sweepers kind of effect. Sunset Revelries for the aggressive decks, Knockout Blow, just some more removal, and then some Graveyard Hate. That's it for the week. Let me know what you've been playing. And as always, if you can, drop a like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.